Welcome back to my channel. In this video, I wanted to cover Streptocephalus sealii, the spiny-tailed fairy shrimp. And if you've been watching my videos, you know that I've covered this species before. After going back and reviewing that video, there's so much more that I wasn't sharing. So I want to go back and redo a lot of these videos so it goes really in depth about these Branchiopods. Let's get right into this video. This is Streptocephalus sealii, commonly known as the spiny-tailed fairy shrimp. Now, this species was described by a zoologist named Ryder in 1879. The genus name is Streptocephalus. Strepto meaning twisted or curved, cephalus as in head, so a twisted/curved head, and that is referring to the structure that is attached to its head, which is the second antenna, which is used for mating. When it comes to appearance, this species typically measures about an inch long. It has a soft, elongated body that typically exhibits different hues of greens, browns, or it's just completely transparent. Like all fairy shrimp, this species lacks a carapace, and it has 11 appendages that it uses to swim. These are called phylopodia. If you didn't know already, all fairy shrimps exhibit sexual dimorphism. And in this way, there are key characteristics that you can point out, especially on the male fairy shrimps. In this species, the males have a very noticeable feature that the females do not have, and that is the spiny tail. The tail consists of the telson, which is the last segment of the abdomen, attached to a pair of sarcopods. In the genus Streptocephalus, sarcopods tend to be cone-shaped. However, in this species, they are long, slender, and pointed at the end. Additionally, on the sides of the sarcopods are these fine bristles known as setae. In this case, this species has fine setae at the basal part of the sarcopod, but as it goes farther away from the body, the setae turns into spines. The first structure that this fairy shrimp has on its head is a frontal appendage. It almost seems like a residual structure in this species, but it's just a small growth in between the two second antennas. Another noticeable trait for this genus, especially on the male fairy shrimp, is the second antenna, and this is the structure on top of the head. I will go in depth about the structure of the male fairy shrimp, but not too in depth that I lose y'all. In fairy shrimps, scientists have used the second antenna, which is a structure on the males.
I lied, it's also on the females.
In order to characterize and identify species. These structures can vary across species, and genus, they can vary much more. But these are notable ways that fairy shrimps can be identified. Now, on the second antenna on this species, there is a section known as the peduncle, and attached to that is known as a hand. The hand is comprised of a structure known as the finger, and additionally the thumb. On these structures are spines and ridges and growths, and these can vary across species. Now, I won't go into depth about every nook and cranny on the second antenna, but I can show you a picture. And the most notable thing for me is that this fairy shrimp tends to have features that are more slender or smooth and pointed. Now, I don't have another picture to reference this one to, but I can definitely link research papers or some kind of resource in the description below. The distribution and habitat of Streptocephalus sealii. This species can be found in North America and in parts of Central America. Here in the United States, this species tends to be found on the East Coast and many different states, for example, Florida, Texas, Alabama, and much more. The habitat that this species occupies can vary, something as simple as a roadside ditch to a naturally occurring ephemeral pool. However, there is a trend of this fairy shrimp being found in habitats with low dissolved solids. Don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure the major cation in their habitat would be calcium. If you weren't aware about fairy shrimp habitats, they are ephemeral, meaning that they hold water for a temporary period of the year. Additionally, these habitats have to be free of fish. Streptocephalus sealii tends to be a spring or summer species depending on seasonal conditions and where you live. During the wet season, these habitats fill with rainwater, and when conditions are just right, which includes temperature, the fairy shrimp eggs will hatch. To recap, if you don't know about the fairy shrimp life cycle, they have the ability known as cryptobiosis, which is essentially they're able to put themselves in a state of diapause. And they can do this by producing a desiccant and drought-resistant egg. These eggs can remain in the soil, dry, until the rainy season comes again. The eggs of Streptocephalus sealii are hexagonal in shape and tend to have deep grooves, But these eggs remain in the soil until the temperature is just right along with the water. And once they do hatch, it is a race against time. Their habitat can last up to 3 weeks, longer or shorter just depending on the amount of rain. Because the habitat is unpredictable, their main goal is to mature as fast as they can and produce the next generation. I would say that the development of the species is pretty rapid, as they can mature within a 2-week time frame. They hatch from the egg into a stage known as Tadpole, where they have very simple features, and over the coming days, they will molt into different instars until they take on that fairy shrimp form. They reach a stage of sexual maturity, they will begin to reproduce, and in the genus Streptocephalus, most of the fairy shrimps have the same mating behavior. The male fairy shrimp will scope around looking for a female, and once he does, he will then align himself with her and essentially launch himself onto her using his second antennas to clasp. The mating process in this species is only a few seconds, and from what I've seen, the males are not very persistent. They tend to mate every so once in a while. Matter of fact, I rarely see them mating, so very rarely do they mate, but they do. In captivity, I've seen these fairy shrimp grow for quite a while, almost 3 months. Now, in the wild, their lifespan is tied to the duration of their habitat. As far as behaviors with this fairy shrimp species, I've noticed that they tend to congregate, so they'll huddle together in a mass. They're also not super active. They tend to have a stationary swimming pattern, so they stay in one location more or less. They are receptive to visual stimuli that I've noticed. Other fairy shrimps could care less if I get close to the tank. However, with this species, they'll tend to dart away. And with all fairy shrimp species that I've worked with, I've noticed that they are sensitive to light. So if you shine a light on them or on the fish tank that they're in, they'll tend to gravitate towards the light. As far as feeding, these 11 pairs of Phylopodia that they have, not only do they use that to swim, but they can filter feed microorganisms from the water. They have this cavity in between their body, and with their appendages, they will scoop up the microorganisms and bring them to their mouth. In their natural habitats, they can eat a range of organisms, which includes algae, bacteria, protozoa, and organic detritus. As far as ecological roles, these fairy shrimp are just a part of the food chain. A billion things could eat them: salamanders, birds, frogs, and even aquatic insects. And through those predatory organisms that are eating them, that is also one way of dispersal. So if a bird eats the fairy shrimp that has eggs, they can actually survive through the bird's digestion and then be released in a different spot. As far as threats and conservation for this species, I would say it's generally secure. It's basically found everywhere. It's probably the most common species here in North America, but don't quote me on that. And that basically concludes the video for Streptocephalus sealii, the spiny-tailed prairie shrimp. If you really like this video, please leave a comment below and give this video a thumbs up. I will go ahead and recreate all those other videos, so keep an eye for the future. But I really appreciate all y'all supporting me. It means a lot. And I hope to see you in the next video.